We're delighted this evening to have Ibrahim Hamide here to speak with us. I came to know Ib through part of his many years serving on the Human Rights Commission, where he expressed a strong commitment, both through word and through action, to implementing universal human rights here down at the local level. Many of you may know Ib as a restaurateur, the owner of Cafe Zenon, Cafe Soraya, or as a human rights advocate here in the community. But Ib is also an immigrant. He is, my sight is fading here. He's a Palestinian who was born in Bethlehem. So please join me to hear Ib's comments and observations here tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. If you guys are expecting a professorial dissertation type presentation, you're not going to get one. I think you would just find a very comfortable place and nuzzle and go to sleep on me, so I'm on to you. The task at hand for me is really simple. Proving that immigrant rights are equal to human rights. There are 4, maybe 5 words in that statement, right? Human rights are immigrant rights. Are, I suppose, is a word, right? Unless you're texting, it's a letter, right? So we have 4 words. 4 words. 2 of them are the same, rights, rights. So what's left over is immigrant and human. So my task here tonight is to prove that immigrants are humans. So I'll need some audience participation so you guys don't fall asleep on me, okay? So let me ask you a question. Are immigrants plants? Are they minerals? Okay, so we have a mineral. We have one pig of minerals. Are they humans? All right, my task is done. See how easy that was? So if immigrants are equal to humans, then the Declaration of the Human Rights includes us. Then we're all humans. So having said that, I'm going to move on to a couple of other little points that I want to score. And then what I'd like to do to make sure that you stay with me is actually share with you my own personal story as an immigrant. I hope it doesn't take me to too many memories that I'll breeze through it. One of the points, though, that I do want to make is that the word immigrant conjures up, maybe in this room, maybe the meaning of what? Latino, you think? When you think of immigrant, what's the first that comes to your mind? Latino? And rightfully so, because the majority of immigrants in this country are Latinos. And they showed up in numbers in this last election, right? And they made a huge difference. So it is incumbent on us all, especially ones in politics, to take notice that the face of this country is changing. The demographics are changing. We're not all lily white anymore. And we need to come to grips with that, and hopefully to accept that. Not to come to grips with it where we bring our baseball bat out. Not where we start pointing fingers at immigrants and blame them for all the ills in this country. Not where we have hate crimes against Arabs and Muslims in this country after 2001 spiked by 1,600%. That's not the grips that I'm talking about. I'm talking about inclusion. I'm talking about remembering that we are humans. We're not minerals. I know one of us disagrees. We're not plants. We're humans. We need to be accorded the same rights as every other human. That's another point. But while we're on the subject of Latinos, I can name a couple of Latino names that I bet you'd recognize that are immigrants and that are good immigrants, right? Any of you heard of J-Lo? How about George Lopez? Okay, funny guy, right? How about Jorge Navarro?
Yeah!
How about Andrea Ortiz? She served this community for many years, right? She juggled a personal life, a nursing career, and she contributed to our life right here in Eugene. How about Carmen Urbina? Anybody else knows another local hero? Andy Fernandez. I can name quite a few. Now, I'm going to turn the tables on you guys. Okay? I would like you to name some Arab immigrants, local or otherwise, that you know of.
Ibrahim.
Okay, that was easy. So, Sam Kamkar, well, he's not Arab, nor is he a Muslim, Bill, but you're close. He's close enough to be one of them. So, anybody knows any current Arab immigrants in this country? Can somebody name one of them? I'm sorry? Nadia Cindy, she's a local resident, yeah. Go ahead, Maria. Okay. Okay. Has anybody heard the name Ralph Nader? Anybody heard the name Paula Abdul? Anybody heard the name Casey Kasem? Anybody heard the name George Mitchell? John Sununu? And many, many others. I could, Christy McAuliffe. You know that lady that blew up in the Challenger when she was an astronaut? Yeah. So, and if I go to Muslims, the list gets even larger and larger. So, there are some good immigrants from both sides, right? So what do you think, what else do we have in common as immigrants? Anybody can tell me, is it that we all are trying to get out of poverty, possibly? Are we running from wars, conflicts in our country? My allegation to you is that poverty is not a crime. What is really criminal is if you stand in the way of those that are trying to get out of poverty. That is what's criminal. When we start slapping numbers on people and they become numbers, not humans anymore. When we require that they have this license or that paper before we consider them equal. When we divide them in silos, those are Asian immigrants. And those are Latinos, and those are Muslims, and those are Christians. That is what is truly criminal, because it totally undercuts our humanity. And anytime we undercut each other's humanity, we're asking for conflicts and problems. The Islamophobia that's cutting across this country is shameful. It has us turning one against the other. There are mosques in Missouri and Tennessee that have been torched to the ground by good, old, loving, democratic Americans. This is between quotes. I'm not speaking Italian, okay? This is quotation marks. Good, loving American citizens that are torching places of prayer. This country is built on the freedom of religion, is it not? Yet we find that we don't tolerate it when we see them as the other. It is, and this is the history of this country, right? It was the Catholics and the Irish. This country went up in arms when Kennedy was elected. Remember? Yeah. So I think it is just our time right now to be under the microscope. Okay? So the history of discrimination in this country is very alive and well documented. And the human rights commissions in Eugene and across the United Nations have their work cut out. We do not lack for problems. Okay? The other point I want to make quickly before I move on is that immigration is not a U.S. issue. It's a worldwide issue. There are girls in France that are from Muslim origin, for instance, that cannot wear the headscarf. There are Turks, multitudes of Turks living in Germany that are also feeling the brunt of discrimination and hate crimes. There are immigrants from Nepal into India, and India exports also immigrants to the world. I was listening to a story by Cesar Malan, another Latino that you probably recognize, right? The dog whisperer, you guys know who he is, right? He was saying that he tried 10 times to cross the fence into this country, and 10 times he failed. And he finally had to, one day when he just was about to give up, he ran into this, what they call coyotes, the ones that help smuggle immigrants across the fence. And that the guy looked scary, skinny, tall, dirty, and scary looking, but he had no choice. It was his last chance at crossing into the U.S. for a new future. And the guy did manage to get him across, not without making him fearing for his life as they crossed tunnels. And he was the only one with that guy, and he's thinking, I've heard horror stories about coyotes knifing people, killing them, and robbing them and leaving them. Yet he finally crossed into the U.S., where he lived under a freeway bridge for a while, and then he started taking odd jobs, busboy, etc., etc. And now when he does a presentation, he has rock star status. The guy worked hard, made something of himself. That is not a crime. It did not take somebody else's job away from them. When I was little, I was born, obviously, before I was little. I was born in a little town called Bethlehem. What do you guys call it in Spanish? Belén? Belén? Belén. Belén is famous for what? The birthplace of Christ, Jesus Christ. I was literally born a block and a half from the Church of Nativity, where Jesus Christ was born. My mom had 13 of us, 7 boys, 6 girls. One boy and 4 girls did not survive childhood diseases, so we ended up a family of 10, including our parents, 6 boys, 2 girls, and we were poor. My father was a farmer on land that we've lived on for over 400 years, his ancestors. And he also was a stonemason, and he also he was a small merchant. He would trade, sell grains, etc. So he had the responsibility of providing for a 10-member family. He had to drop out from school in the 4th grade. My mom was not much more educated, not by choice. They both were very smart people. Their first priority was to make sure that all their children get educated. They wanted to send us to universities, but they didn't know how. They didn't have the means. So they worked as hard as they could to feed us and clothe us and send us to public schools and allow us and help us and propel us to dream. My oldest sister graduated from high school at 17. She was teaching school at 17 and a half. She took some courses and immediately started to teach to help the family. My brother, right next to her, immigrated from Bethlehem when he was 18, just finished high school. He went to Kuwait. The Gulf states at that time were being developed. He could find a job and he could get an education because my father could not afford to send him to a university. My brother got he collected some money in Kuwait, working jobs, sent money back home, saved some money for college, ended up in Canada studying. Then he came across and studied in Texas and other states and ended up getting a master's degree from the University of Oregon in Business Administration. And soon after that, he got hired by Procter & Gamble and was taken to be a manager in Switzerland for one of their divisions in the Middle East. In 1967, I was 17 years old, when the Six-Day War broke out. And soon after the Six-Day War, my home became occupied, and I realized that opportunities for me were diminishing very fast. So I was hoping to further my education, but I didn't know how. I didn't have the means. My oldest brother fortunately said that he's willing to help me out. So I started dreaming of coming out west and continuing my education. I was afforded that opportunity by him. He said he would pay for my schooling. I took that up very, very fast. Now it was time to leave home. Now, immigrants probably will recognize what I'm talking about. Leaving home was not easy for me because I had a very, very good childhood. Poor family, but very loving, very wonderful family. And here it is, time to depart, to leave everything I have ever known. I had a very vague idea where I was going to study, whether it's in Europe or the United States. I did not know where. So here's the courage of leaving everything you've known, all the people that you've ever loved. I remember my friends just writing me in this book all their notes, how they will never forgive me if I don't come back, if I don't write, and they will miss me. And the family that was crying, and the neighbors that would get up at 4 in the morning to see me off on my day of leaving. And the coffee that they poured on the steps so I'll walk over it. Just an old wives' tale. It means good luck and yes, you will be back. and the handkerchief that I had that was full of my tears as I was leaving my parents and my brothers and sisters and my home, the only memories I've known. That was not easy. But my desire to better myself was stronger. And my also commitment to myself and to my family that I'll go get a 4-year degree, come back and help the family, as my dad's dream was to all go out, get degrees, and come back and live on the farm, teach, be a lawyer, be a dentist, whatever we may be. So I left with a suitcase in hand, a suit on my back, and 1 English pound in my pocket. Brave. And I landed in Switzerland, my first flight ever, my first time to be on a plane. This is pre-internet, this is pre-cell phones. So my knowledge of the world had shrunk to what I learned in school. I left home, we did not have running water, we did not have a television set, we did not have a refrigerator. So you may have to look at your history books to relate to what I'm talking about. So it takes a lot of courage to leave. I had to wear a suit that my brother that was residing in Switzerland had sent me so he would recognize me, because it's been 11 years since we've seen each other. And you know, 11 years are a lot of changes. A lot of changes happen in 11 years at that age. And it truly, if it wasn't, I did not recognize him when he was at the airport, and he only recognized me because he recognized the suit I was wearing. After visiting with my brother in Switzerland and in England for a few months, I wrote to schools, and one of the schools that accepted me was the University of Oregon. And since I had never been here before, never been out west, I asked his recommendation, and he said, oh, he loves Eugene, the Ducks rock. I don't think he used that word, but and he thought this would be a really good fit for me. I arrived here Monday, April 1st, 1969. And it was registration day at the university. And I knew nobody except a family that he recommended that to stay with for a week. And I had $400 in my pocket, 333 of which I paid tuition that day I arrived here. $67 were left in my pocket. This family hosted me for 5 days before somehow I finagled a room in the dorms, which was near miraculous because it was spring term. Those rooms are usually taken during the fall, but fortunately there was a very studly guy who was a football player who did not like to abide by room regulations of the dorms, and I got a hold of him through a friend, and I paid him $50 and he gave me his room. It was really good. So I lived in the dorms. I arrived here Monday. The Monday after, I started working as a busboy for $1.25 an hour. I worked 2 and 3 jobs in the summer to collect enough money for tuitions to pay for the fall. I was broke by winter. So I sought scholarships and worked on campus and worked illegally because on a student visa you can't really work off campus. Life wasn't what I had envisioned it. Or heard that in America all you have to do is bring your rake because the money is on the streets. It was a little bit of a shock. and landing in Eugene, Oregon in 1969 was a shock in itself. Do you guys remember? Some of you are gray-haired enough to remember what was happening, right? Patchouli oil, free love, Kent State killing, demonstrations against the Vietnam War, pot smoking, whatever. That never went away, thank God. Okay, so to me, coming from that culture I came from, it might as well landed on the surface of the moon. It could not have been any more different. If somebody told me when I was leaving back home I was going to be standing in front of an audience like you, or speaking about Islamophobia, what the heck is that? Or defending immigrant rights, I was just passing through town, wanted to get a 4-year degree and go back, don't want any trouble. After 4 years, I forgot to leave. So I'm still around. So, as my family still lives there, and I feel like somebody in the video said that I don't belong here, because 42 years after I've been here, still I get people asking me, where are you from? 42 years after I've lived here, or 32 years after I lived here, I get bricks thrown through my restaurant window after 2001 from cars that are traveling on 13th Street at 30-mile-an-hour velocity. A brick that narrowly missed some guests that I had in my restaurant, and it would have done major damage to them. Another person on a Thursday night walked through my dining room and threw a smoke bomb. What have I done? I'm asking myself, what did I do to deserve this? Oh, I'm one of them. It hurts your feeling to really care and be very much cognizant about wanting to be part of this melting pot, part of the humanity of the humans that live here, and being rejected and being called a raghead, a sand nigger, being wiretapped by the FBI just because I am where I'm from. You know, I went back home to visit, and as I took a taxi cab to Bethlehem, this guy was talking to me, and he turns around and he goes, where did you learn your English? It's really, your Arabic, it's really good. I said, buddy, you just blew your tip. I know who you are. I know your father. He was in my class. I grew up here. So it sort of was a little subtle reminder that, like the Irish gentleman in the video saying that they can detect his accent even when he goes to Ireland, because it's an American accent. So sometimes it depends on the day. Sometimes you feel like you don't belong in either culture. And some other days you feel like you have two homes. The human spirit, though, chooses the positive almost 99.9%, except when we're tired and beat up. But when we're not, we choose the positive. People like Guadalupe inspire me. Somebody who's worked here, for how long has Guadalupe Quinn been working on social justice issues? When I think of that, I go, I ain't no wimp. If she could do that, I can do that. How long have you been working on social justice issues? Just in this room, I have so many inspirations that I wish I could capture them all, take them on a plaque. When I go back home, tell them this is my new American family. And I'm very proud of them. And I'm very, very happy to be part part of a family that's bigger than the family I left back home.